Welcome to another episode of Pound for Pound Boxing Report. I'm your host, Michael. Joining me this week, Daniel from the Inscriber. Later on, Gail from Communities Digital News should be joining us. For those who are new to Pound for Pound Box Report, Pound for Pound Box Report, live YouTube show, podcast, as well as blog discussing all things boxing. First and foremost, I want to say my apologies to getting the last episode out so late on YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, and whatnot. Again, I got really behind on some things, and I was late dropping the episode. For those who are new to Pound for Pound Box Report, Pound for Pound Box Report live, uh, YouTube show, podcast, as well as blog discussing all things boxing. The motto is: when boxing is good, we will talk about it. When it's bad, we will talk about it. Bottom line is, if it concerns boxing, we will talk about it. If you want to find out all the information regarding Pound for Pound Box Report, the blog page is the place to go to, p4pboxingreport.wordpress.com. That's the link. Check the right of the blog page. You will find the links to where to find Pound for Pound Box Report all over social media, as well as where you can find the podcast on all podcast platforms available. Spotify, iTunes, Player FM, and the what like. Let's get things started. Before recapping what happened this weekend, got a request following the last episode. Shout out to Big Rotten Apple for checking out the last episode. He mentioned that we failed to talk about the Lamont Peterson Sergey Lipinets fight. He's absolutely right about that. That's a fight we omitted. I'm going to give opportunity to talk about it now. Lipinets fighting Peterson, basically Peterson's backyard, DC area, DMV area. Lipinets stopping Peterson by 10th round TKO. In the immediate aftermath, Peterson said that it's time to call it a day. He retired immediately following the fight. I'll go to you, Daniel. Recap the fight itself and give your thoughts on the career of one Lamont Peterson.
Well, the fight itself, it's pretty much an illustration of Lamont Peterson in the welterweight division, where he has the work rate to stay there. He has the determination to stay there. The desire to exchange and to fight back is there. The problem is, though, unfortunately, that weight class is just one step too many. And it started to show early on as Lipinets, who was fighting pretty well as the fight went on, started to outpace Lamont when it came to the middle rounds. Wasn't hurting him as badly, but was still pacing him, hurting him to the body, and just taking whatever snap Lamont had in his punches out of them. And you could tell by the 8th and the 9th round, unfortunately, that there wasn't much left in the tank. Like, Lipinets was systematically making sure that he did not have much left. And in the 10th round, we have to admit, like, it wasn't a situation where, like, he looked really, really rocked or like it was devastating knockout. He got in and he got knocked down, but that was enough for Barry Hunter. Remember, it was a TKO because Barry Hunter threw in the towel. And it was a fitting end in a way when it came into it, because I know we talk about a lot when it comes to trainers that it's hard for them to love their fighters like family. Barry Hunter is one of those people that really loves his fighters like family, particularly the Peterson brothers. He really loves them, that they're his sons, and it clearly showed, like in that fight, like in the first instance where it looked like Lamont might get in real trouble. He threw in the towel at the first stance, and you could tell that they had a talk in between the interviews and the announcement of the TKO. They kind of had a talk, and that's how. And you knew that the talk was coming from Barry Hunter when, in the post-fight interview, he's the one that said Lamont has something to say. And when there was Lamont Peterson announcing his retirement. Now, As our good friend Jacob Rivera always says, like, it's hard to believe boxers when they say to retire. But with Lamont's case, I would probably say I would have to believe it, because if he chooses to come back, it has to be with another trainer. And not only does it have to be with another trainer, it has to be with Barry Hunter's blessing of that trainer. And I don't think he's going to get that if he chooses to come back. And when you look back at his career, it was a career that had some steady ebb and flows. Obviously, the conflicts where the PD situation came in really stirred the pot a little bit, and he technically should have lost his IBF junior welterweight title to Lucas Matisse, but they somehow made sure that title wasn't on the line when Matisse knocked him out in the third round. But when he went to welterweight, you could tell that the skill is there, the tenacity is there, just the power wasn't there. And it eventually started showing in the fights, and it became more dangerous opponents, younger opponents. And like I said, his career is going to be an interesting one to look at in the future. It's going to be one of those fighters that had a lot of potential, had some success, but had not one situation happened, or had he's probably done better at trying to stay at 140, he would have had more success.
If Peterson would have boxed in the same way he did in large portions of his fight against Garcia, he could have won this fight. The problem is, at this age, at this point of his career, he can't do it. Particularly, as you said, Daniel, he's fighting at 147 because in many ways, Lamont Peterson is a tweener. Too big. He can't make 140 anymore, having too much trouble to get down to junior welterweight, but he doesn't have quite the size to deal with top welterweights. That combined with his age, and you can certainly understand why he decided to call it a day. In terms of the relationship with him and Hunter, it goes back even before Peterson, as well as his older brother, his younger brother, excuse me, Anthony, started fighting. For those who don't know, the Peterson brothers were basically homeless until Hunter found them, discovered them, if you will, and the relationship built from there. It goes far beyond boxing. It's like father son, and it will be hard for Lamont if he should go on to kind of pull away from that kind of relationship. I just don't see him doing it. So for those reasons alone, I think he's going to stay true to his decision to retire. Very good career, solid career, two-time world champion, two different weight divisions, I believe. And yeah, you mentioned how Hunter really looks out for him. You saw that not only in this fight, but you also saw it in the Errol Spence fight, where Spence was really beating him up, was starting to really beat him up, I should say. And it was Hunter who was like, I'm not going to let you take this extra punishment. He decided to call a halt to that bout as well. So in terms of Lamont Peterson, really, really tough way to go out. It sucks that you see a fighter so respected in the sport go out like that. But unfortunately, sadly, those are the breaks when it comes to the sport. And yeah, you just glad that he, in spite of the loss, he still has his faculties. Let's hope that he has kept his money, if you will, and for me personally, let's hope he has a future in the sport. I think he would make a very, very good trainer personally, and I want to see him continue to be involved in the sport of boxing. So yeah, we forgot to talk about that fight last week, and we just decided to start the show by recapping that fight. Now let's go back. Let's start recapping what happened this weekend. Let's start with Oleksandr Gvozdyk. As we all know, Gvozdyk won the WBC title against Adonis Stevenson. Tragic bout, given what happened to Stevenson, the injuries that he suffered. Excuse me, and he's on the way, slowly but surely, to recovery from those injuries. Gvozdyk making his first defense against Doudou Hgumbu. I think that's how you pronounce his name. I'm butchering it. The fight was stopped in the 5th round due to a injury to Hgumbu. I'm watching this fight, Daniel, and to me, my only reaction was like, yeah, okay, Gvozdyk, he won. I don't think he was that impressive. His opponent didn't have a great record. Uh, you look at his list of opponents, yeah. You look at the way he fought, he was largely defensive, yet and still he landed a couple shots here and there on Gvozdyk. And I'm like, what if this was the other champions in there? What if this was a Bivol? What if this was a Kovalev? What if this was a Bertubee, Marcus Brown? I think they would have fared better in there than Gvozdyk. I left sense of, okay, as good as he may look, as good as he looked in winning the belt from Stevenson, I'm like, would he fight? Would he be competitive against the other top light heavyweights in the world? Not based on what we saw over the weekend.
Part of me wants to see if this is a similar situation to what we see with Gilberto Ramirez, where it only seems that he only fights to the level of his competition, and otherwise, like, he just doesn't really fight that well. I'm thinking with Vassell that may be the case. Now, we have to realize, yeah, it's his first defense. It's not a mandatory, so it's a gimme in a sense. Especially like when the opponent of Doudou's record. But like I said, this was just something to get his first defense going, because they know Marcus Brown should be next. He's the mandatory. So they need to get him, like I said, get a quick loose, get a quick defense. If he was going to look good, he probably should have done it with the first 2 or 3 rounds, but this wasn't the type of fight. It's probably just get him some rounds in, make sure that he really, like I said, feels how it is to be a champion. And ultimately, when you look at the first opponents, that's the one interesting matchup that probably wanted to see outside of Marcus Brown, because we know that fight's going to come, is Bivol. Because we know now, we have enough evidence in Bivol that if he doesn't feel he can knock you out within the first 2 rounds, he's going to play it safe. And if you have a similar situation like that, where it's Bivol and then Gvozdyk doing the same thing, that may turn into a very defensive matchup. Kovalev, Kovalev's going to try. He's going to try to outbox him, but if he feels like he's hurt him, the crusher may come out. We know Beterbiev will try to knock him out. So it'll be interesting to see how it goes. But then again, we always have to remember that almost all of ththose guys are also Egis Klima's clients. And we know what happens with Egis Klima's clients when it comes to facing each other.
If he were to fight, based on what I've seen, I think Bivol is too smooth. He's too quick. Too much hand and, more importantly, foot speed and technical skill for Gvozdyk, based on what I've seen so far. You mentioned Marcus Brown, who is his mandatory contender. Assuming the fight happens next, who would you pick? Are you there,
Right
Dan?
now,
Okay.
yeah. Sorry, I put myself on mute for a little bit. As far as who would be right now, I would probably say Brown because Brown has that hunger in him. He wants to be champion. And you also know that he kind of screwed himself out of a championship. Remember, because he wasn't supposed to be the one fighting. He was supposed to be fighting Kovalev for the WBO title. We would have seen that on August 4th. Instead of between him and Eloy Alvarez. If that's the Kovalev that showed up, Marcus Brown would probably be the WBO champion. So I would probably pick Brown because he has the hunger for it, but I still need to see whether it's a situation where just Vassell was just fighting to the level of his competition.
Let's move on to some other fights. Well, right now, I would lean towards Brown, particularly the Brown that we saw against Doudou Jack. He showed some improvements in that. Gvozdyk will have some trouble. I don't know how well he will deal with a southpaw of Brown's talent. I don't want to be too critical of him, but given the level of opponent, I just expected a little bit more from Gvozdyk than what I saw over the weekend, particularly the way he looked against Stevenson. I see what you need is in the chat. Give me a second. What you need, I'll send you the link. I'll send you the link via Facebook. Just give me a hot second. Let's move on to talk about some other fights here. Let's head over to the DAZN card that took place over the weekend as well. Took place, I want to say, in Fantasy Springs. Yeah. Ryan Garcia, hot shot lightweight, getting a lot of buzz, promoted by Golden Boy. Garcia, the ladies love him. He talks a lot, flashy. Fought a guy by the name of Jose Lopez. Garcia stopped him in round 2. Your thoughts on the development of Ryan Garcia so far, Daniel? He's moved up to 135. I think that's better suits him. He's a growing young man. He's only 20 years old. He was big for a junior lightweight, and he's big for a lightweight. They're already talking world title shot for him possibly at the end of the year. Is he ready for that at this young stage of his career?
No. Put it bluntly right now, no. Because, yeah, I said the kid is still 20. I think this was his first fight with the Reynosos, I think, as a training camp.
Yes.
And like I said, my old adage always is you have to have at least 2 or 3 fights with your trainer in order for you to fully get acclimated with it. But what he is showing, at least in this first fight, and Oscar Valdez showed also when his comeback fight. Remember, he's also with the Reynoso family. They're starting to learn how to finish a little bit faster, because that was one of the complaints. Remember when Ryan Garcia was put in, I think, on the Canelo undercards. Was he looks good, he can box, but he just can't really finish when he needs to. This is luckily they're probably trying to teach him a little bit more about when to spot a guy when he's down, and then setting yourself up, plant your feet, and throw those punches really well. And he looked good in this fight. As far as him, like I said, as far as him challenging for titles, no. No. I would keep him away from champions probably for at least 2 or 3 more years. You got to let the kid develop. Like we mentioned, he's not even 21 yet. So we don't know what weight class he's been. Like he was pretty big for junior lightweight. He's pretty big for lightweight now. What says that in 2 or 3 years from now he's not at 140? So I would say wait a bit. on that, but I know just like in many ways, like Shakur Stevenson, how Top Rank is handling him and trying to fast track his way. Golden Boy might do the same thing when it comes to Ryan Garcia because he does remind people a little bit of what Oscar was early on in his career as far as the appeal to the female demographic. Ladies do love him, and that is very, very reasonable means to get the kid up in the spotlight as fast as possible. But we have to remember, Golden Boy doesn't exactly have a stable of stars behind Canelo that are ready made to take his place when he steps down. And Ryan is going to be one of those guys they're going to lean on for that. Him, in a way, still Jojo Diaz. So they still have pieces to build. I wouldn't surprise me if they try to do it, but I would keep him away. I would keep him away from many champions for at least 2 or 3 more years.
Okay. I see Gail has joined us. Can you hear us, first of all, Gail?
I can hear you. Am I on board?
Yeah. Could you hear Daniel?
I did.
Okay, cool.
I'd love to jump in on this conversation. I was ringside for that card, Fantasy Springs. And Ryan Garcia, is he ready for a title? Well, he thinks he is, but I agree with Daniel. He's not quite ready. And that is okay. He is very impatient. He's very ambitious. And that's a great thing. There is nothing wrong with it. But he does not need to be in a hurry. He's 20 years old. He's got plenty of time. And he can buy himself some time while he continues to work with the Reynosos. This was actually his second fight with them. And build up a little more of the man's strength. He is a very tall, rangy kid. He's still got some man filling out to do. So let him take some time to do that, to be with Eddie a little more. Remember how we all have to bear in mind and think back how long it took for the Reynoso team, father and son, working with Canelo to get him to where he is. They've been working with him since he was a teenager. So Ryan needs to look at that trajectory as well and think ahead about what his career could be if he does it the right way. Here's the other thing, and here's what's so great about the potential of Ryan Garcia, not just in the ring, but outside the ring. Yeah, Daniel, it's true. There were a lot of ladies at the fight. Here's what's really interesting. There were a lot of young guys their age there too. If you walked into the Fantasy Springs Casino after the fight, it was jam-packed, a Saturday night, full of teenagers, people, at least quite a bit of the crowd was too young to legally buy themselves alcohol, I'll put it that way, and then a sizable amount in the young 20s. Men and women, groups of friends, they're all wearing their boxing t-shirts, they're flying their colors, they're sticking around, they're having fun, they're excited about it, and they will keep selling out that venue up there in the high desert as long as Ryan Garcia wants to show up, or any of the other many fighters who are up from that area of Southern California, which, sort of gets forgotten. But it is a hotbed of a lot of talent, a lot of local guys who fight on the cards. And sure, Ryan Garcia, the matinee idol Ryan Garcia, the Instagram star, brings them in. But they get their butts in the seats and they get to see a really young guy who is very exciting, Aaron McKenna, the Irish prospect, who had a great little fight on that undercard. They get to see a guy like Joet Gonzalez, who had a sensational performance. He is a unappreciated talent in that stable. Up to date, he's a little bit more under the radar. Jojo Diaz has sort of stolen some of his attention, and maybe Ryan, but he made a lot of people sit up and take notice. So everybody goes to see Ryan, but maybe they see an Aaron McKenna or a Joet Gonzalez or a great debut by Mexican fighter Rocky Hernandez. Excellent performance, very exciting. He draws in some fans. He's 21 years old. This is nothing but good for boxing. Develop those fans, get them hooked. Whatever brings them in the building doesn't matter. Keep them there. To get excited about, and they'll keep coming back and watching and coming back and getting excited. To see that casino full of that crowd was the best news boxing could ask for. And I also saw, you know, that casino venue is very friendly, fan friendly, and is very local, kind of very engaging in the community out there. So a lot of the younger fighters who are either from that area or greater LA or high desert, they finish their fights, they come back out into the casino themselves and they go and get dinner and they hang around, and they're very accessible, very approachable. Aaron McKenna, you know, is a 6'1", you know, lightweight himself, or actually 6'1" welterweight, you know, tall, you know, very toe-headed, blonde Irishman. He's super easy to spot in a crowd out there, getting approached by all of Garcia's fans. Hey, man, you were really great. He's loving it. This is what Ryan Garcia can add to the sport. And they need to slow roll him, as ambitious as he is, to keep this momentum and build this crowd, and they'll be with him and boxing forever. But right now, he's improving. He is really wild. He wings a lot of shots that he shouldn't be throwing. And he's going to need to learn some discipline and a little bit better ring intelligence to get to where he needs to go. And that's going to take time because he's 20 years old.
Okay, both follow-up question for you, Gail and Daniel. Since you both agreed that Garcia is not ready for a title shot yet, where would you like to see Golden Boy take him on the march towards an eventual world title shot?
I would probably, if it was me, I would like to see what weight he's actually going to be most comfortable in. Because, like we mentioned, he was pretty big at 130. He's pretty big now at lightweight. So we have to see now whether a move to 140 could also be in the foreseeable future. We have to see what weight he feels comfortable at, where he feels his power is coming in his best, where his speed can still play a factor. And also you have to look at the cusp of the division as well. Lightweight right now is pretty open because we don't know how long it's going to take for Mikey to come back. Some of the fighters he's not going to face because of PBC, like Robert Easter. There's also some pretty decent other fighters like Luke Campbell. He can match up, even though Luke Campbell's right now Garcia's mandatory. Mikey Garcia's mandatory, but that would be a decent fight coming into it because Luke Campbell looks pretty well. And who knows, we may actually see even, and this would be a pretty interesting fight for Golden Boy to pick, and it would give me a little bit of Zaragoza Morales vibes a little bit. Maybe because of what happened to him against Pablo Cesar Cano. Maybe eventually try to pair him up with Jorge Linares. But that would probably be 1 or 2 years down the line. That would probably be like the fight you want to make before he finds in for the title. But I would probably want to decide first what is going to be the weight class you're going to do it in, because you might be at 140 when you're 21 because that kid is still growing.
Your thoughts, Gail?
Yeah, I'm right there with Daniel. I don't think this is where Ryan Garcia will remain for very long. He is just really lean, and working with the Reynosos, he gained pretty quick, I wouldn't be surprised to see him go up yet another division. And the test will be, Daniel, you nailed it. You know, the balance of gaining strength is losing, where Garcia feels his greatest talent lies. And, you know, if you've seen his Instagram account or his Twitter account or anywhere where videos are posted of him, it's all about speed, speed, speed. But that cannot be his only tool in the toolkit. We need to give the Reynosos time to work with him. I mean, it has been a matter of months. You could even say weeks at this point. It's a good fit. They're going the right direction, but they need to get down the road a little farther. Truly, he can continue to fight in Southern California. Maybe he gets over to Vegas to be on a Canelo undercard. He really, really wants to fight on the May 4th undercard. He made that very clear that he'd love to do that. And you know, that's perfect for him. Hold him there for another year or so. Give him 4 or 5 more fights in the next year. There's no end of journeyman, decent, not an embarrassment fighters in Mexico and Southern California that'll put fans in the seats. Heck, apparently Oscar and Miguel Cotto are working together, putting a lot of matches together with Miguel's prospects. Match them up. Get the Mexico-Puerto Rico rivalry going in Ryan's next few fights. There's plenty of talent to be more than willing to give themselves a test against Ryan that give him good, solid experience, but don't exactly threaten to overpower him or beat the hell out of him. You know, we don't want that. And then maybe it's next Cinco de Mayo, he's ready for a title shot. Maybe by the end of the year, he goes for one of these minor crackerjack regional title belts just to keep him happy. That would be perfectly okay with me. But don't throw him to the wolves just yet. It's the worst thing that can be done for a kid like this. Give him time. He needs, if anybody needs to marinate, it's Ryan Garcia.
This is crazy and far-fetched, but you mentioned Mexican-Puerto Rico rivalry. First of all, I will say shout out to Big Rotten Apple. Shout out to George from Hands of Fire Boxing for checking us out live, as well as their comments on the YouTube chat. You know what's crazy? This is far-fetched and really crazy. You mentioned Mexican-Puerto Rico rivalry. You know what would be interesting? If Verdejo was to win a couple of fights on the comeback, put him in the ring with Garcia. Thoughts?
It depends on how far Ryan is in his career, because Verdejo is it's unfortunately one of these guys that has gotten a lot of hype, and unfortunately, through either matchmaking or main complacency, he hasn't lived up to it. It's going to take a while to build him back up, even if he's with Miguel or still with Bob. Because we have to remember what Verdejo was being positioned as before. He was being positioned as the next Tito. So I could see where you're going with him, Mike. Like, it's like, okay, the next Tito versus the next Oscar, as far as how their fan bases can perceive them. But I have to see how Verdejo looks in his fights in the interim. We have to see if he can truly be remade, or if he is what he is. If he is what he is, then that fight loses a lot of luster. If you want to do a Mexico Puerto Rico fight, though, there's always Machado.
Well, we have to see with Machado. We'll talk about him in a little bit, but your thoughts on the possible fight I just threw out there. Again, if Verdejo wins a couple of more fights on the comeback trail and looks good, Gail, your thoughts on that?
You know, I am going to repeat a line that we use frequently here at the Pound for Pound Report, and I bet you know where I'm going with this.
You're not mad about it.
I don't hate it. creative idea. And Verdejo is certainly not a power threat to Garcia. At least he certainly hasn't developed into one. He's a name that people know. It's a name that's taken on a little bit of tarnish, but hey, if he wins a few fights, so be it. Now, I did think you were going to say Machado, and depending on what happens in the rematch that apparently he and Andrew Cancio have agreed to, that opens up a very interesting option. Very interesting option. But clearly there are options for Garcia, and Oscar is not going to do anything too rash or crazy at this point. He'll do whatever it takes to keep him happy, but he is not going to put him in harm's way. Not right now.
On the undercard of Garcia and his win against Lopez, he had Angel Acosta fighting. For those who don't know, Angel Acosta holds a belt at 108 pounds. I want to say WBO version. I could be wrong. Anyway, regarded as one of the hardest punchers in the sport, pound for pound, every one of his wins has been by knockout. He defended his title for, I believe it was the third time, against former champion Ganigan Lopez. And I'll go to you, Gail, if you saw the fight. Acosta, he's known as a puncher, but since his loss to Tanaka, for me, I think he's improved greatly, and you saw it in this fight. He was very workmanlike. He was very professional, cool. Yeah, he hurt Lopez early, but Lopez is tricky, a veteran, solid defense, but yet Acosta slowly but surely broke him down. He worked the body and the head. The jab was very effective. For me, at least, I was very impressed with what I saw.
Likewise, I was ringside for that fight. It was part of the Garcia card out at Fantasy Springs. And Acosta is such a pretty fighter to watch. His fundamentals are absolutely beautiful, not a hair out of place. Normally, though, he's been known as a volume puncher, a guy that's, pouring out punches round after round. He didn't fight that way this time. And maybe it wasn't as flashy a performance as people thought they were going to see, but it was a much more important performance. It was far more nuanced. It's the kind of performance that takes someone deep into their career successfully. He hurt Lopez early, buzzed him, and Lopez is, as you said, a veteran, and he didn't want any part of that. He didn't want that to happen again. So he started approaching Acosta a lot more cautiously and staying out of his way, which he was able to do. So Acosta said, fine, you're not in a hurry. I'm not going to be in a hurry. I'm going to get you eventually. I'm going to break you down. I'm going to watch for my opportunity. And eventually, Mr. Lopez, you're going to make a mistake. And that's exactly what happened. Lopez decides in, I believe, the 8th round, he's going to move in on Acosta. He's decided that he's maybe not all as dangerous as he thought, and he forgot about being buzzed in the first round, and decided he's going to fire off some combinations to come to Acosta. And Acosta saw every move on the chessboard down the line and fired off the perfect counterpunch, and it was pretty much over at that point. Acosta is just so technically proficient. And unlike a lot of just purely technical defensive fighters, he's still got the firepower to back it up when he feels like getting it on. He's absolutely terrific. And it discuss not only his performance, but his future. And like a lot of guys in the small weight divisions, he's got a little bit of a chip on his shoulder because he feels like he's being overlooked. And he said, listen, I want good fights, but I want a payday. I want a big check just like the big guys. Good for him for saying so. That he's not wrong about that. Those guys sometimes find a very hard have a very hard time getting on cards, getting featured, but they are every bit as good, talented, as exciting as guys that weigh 100 pounds more than they do. So good for him. It was a great performance.
Yeah, again, I'm glad that he did that as well. That's what you have to do when you're in those divisions. If you want big money, you have to make statements in and out of the ring. You got to let folks know who you are and your value as a fighter, Daniel. Your reaction to what you saw in Acosta's stoppage win over Lopez.
Gail took the words right out of my mouth. Like, the way he fought was not what you expected. It wasn't, like I said, it wasn't as flashy, but it's maybe what he needed to sit down a little bit more. And you mentioned the loss to Tanaka. It may be something that's needed to actually put him in a place of confidence where he can trust his power 100% again and put it in with the skill. So it's a really, really good outing for it. And I agree, like, that was a good showing and the good crowd, the DAZN card, with you being in one of the lower weight classes. You definitely need to pay attention to it, particularly when it's 105 or 108, because fighters don't stay long. Like, it's very, very rare where you have like a Hickey Butler situation where those guys always never go past 108. But it was a really good showing. Hopefully, he'll be booked in more fights here in the States. And maybe, just maybe, we might see a rematch with Tanaka.
I doubt it. I doubt it, to be honest with you, because I think Tanaka is going to move up to 115 pounds at the end of the year, early 2020, moving forward for Acosta. In the aftermath, a lot of folks are talking about a possible fight between him and IBF champion Felix Alvarado. That will be a war, very exciting fight. But for me, I'm looking to the Far East. I would love to see him in there against Cancio, WBC champion, Koiguchi, who just beat Hickey Butler at the end of 2018. Koiguchi, the WBA champion. That's where the real money is. Koiguchi would be a barn burner too. Cancio, really classy guy, but given how Acosta looked in there, if he can exhibit that class against Shiro with his power, he will give Shiro a very, very, very tough fight. So yeah, again, highly impressed by what I saw with Angel Acosta. To me, he's just not just the one-trick pony. He showed to me that he's more than just a puncher in there. He's becoming a complete fighter, and that lost to Tanaka 2 years ago. He's learned a lot from, a whole lot, and he's become a better fighter as a result. Let's move on to some news here. I'll go to you, Gail, on this one. Rumors have kicked off about a possible comeback for Wladimir Klitschko. Word is that he received a 3-fight deal, 3-fight offer from DAZN, 3 fights in the range of $120 million. 2 questions, Gail. 1, do you think he will accept it and we will see Klitschko back in the ring? And 2, given the money that DAZN reportedly offered Wladimir Klitschko, what does that say about Deontay Wilder, given what they reportedly offered Deontay Wilder, which was a little bit less than the reported offer to Klitschko?
Well, John Skipper, who's the executive chairman of DAZN, that they've got money and they're willing to spend it to get guys they want. They want to bring as many big names into the stable and lock them up as possible. In my opinion, the reason that Deontay Wilder didn't take the money is he values his freedom and his status as a free agent more than the sure thing. And I admire that. Now, time will tell if he's making the right decision for his future. But he was not willing to trade being locked in and accountable to one boss, no matter what the money was. And truly, you have to admire that. A guy willing to take his fate in his hands. Because at this point, Wilder is flexible enough to work with virtually anybody. He's not obligated to Showtime. That's where his fights have been, but he's not locked in there. He is in a position to be in command of all the decisions that hold out. So good for him. So here's John Skipper thinking, what else is out there? Whether he's serious about this offer, whether this offer has truly been made, whether it's being considered by Klitschko, he doesn't necessarily need to be in any big hurry to talk about it, accept it, do anything. He may, at this point of his career, be willing to just enjoy all of us talking about him right now. I think in the end, it's not going to happen. There's not a whole lot of upside to him returning to the ring from a sport standpoint. It would be more about the money. And Klitschko's got a lot of irons in the fire. He's done a very good job managing his money. And again, a little like Wilder, there's a lot of positives to being in control of your own fate. He strikes me, from what little I know about him, as one of these people who says, listen, at some point in your life, you've got enough. You don't need any more money. I'm all but positive that's where he is. So if he comes back, it's not for the money. It's something else. Is he that competitive? Does he feel he still has a role to play in his 40s? Time will tell. If I was a betting woman, I'd bet against it.
Klitschko and K2, they're involved with Triple G. Are they getting any piece of that money from the Triple G's deal with DAZN?
No, not that I know of. And, Golovkin has had his issues with K2. He is affiliated with Tom Loeffler, who's now affiliated with his own company 360. So there's a little bit of change in some of the relationships. And Golovkin is also in litigation with his two longtime former managers who he feels shafted him out of some money. So, Golovkin's playing some hardball as far as all that's concerned. What his relationship is to the Klitschkos personally, having come up under their banner, I'm not sure that it's a particularly tight relationship. I don't think it's all that bad, but they're certainly not directing his career at this point. He is directing his career. People that are working with him, he's not working for them. They're working for him.
Before I go to Daniel, read a couple of comments here in the chat. And for those in the chat, thanks for joining us first off. And be sure to hit that like button. If you're not subscribed, please subscribe. Big Rotten Apple is saying peace, Mike. He's mentioned that Marcos Maidana is serious, seems to be serious about his comeback. He's working with Alan Zariza. Did I see the interview where Ariza said Maidana came in at over 200 pounds and aiming to come back at welterweight? Yes, he seems to be serious. I did read where Maidana began his comeback over 200 pounds. And okay, he's serious, but it looks like, based on some of the videos I've seen, that I'm doing more serious and hard grinding workouts than Maidana is right now. So he's going to have to do a lot of work to get back down to 147 pounds because he looked rather large still in the workouts that I've seen of him.
Michael, you need to send Marcos El Chino your phone number, for God's sakes, man.
And shout out to Gus as well. He's in the chat. Also shout out to George. Gus is saying sooner rather than later, Ryan Garcia's fate is lying horizontal on the canvas. Poor fundamentals, too flashy. wild, no defense on the back foot. He's also said that Acosta Alvarado is the fight for him. And he feels also, as an aside, that Koiguchi beats Kenshiro. For me, Gus, and I said this in the chat, I'll say it publicly here. Acosta Koiguchi, for me, will be fight of the year worthy, as would an Acosta versus Alvarado fight. Gus also has another fourth comment. He says that Acosta versus Koiguchi could be for undisputed, the two best in the weight class in all of boxing. I agree. That could be, you know, for undisputed. That's a very good fight. Based on what I've seen, I just said it and I'll say it again. Based on what I've seen, the Acosta that we saw over the weekend, again, that Acosta will give Kenshiro a fight, and I think that Acosta may well beat Koiguchi. Again, Acosta Koiguchi, that's a hell of a fight based on styles alone. I go to you, Daniel. Your thoughts on the rumors regarding a possible Klitschko comeback?
I have to believe it when I see it, because based on how you view his life, based on how he handles his business, I agree. It's not going to be about the money. He handles his money pretty well. We know he has K2. We know, like, he and his brother are also involved in Ukrainian politics. So money's not going to be an issue. The main thing would be is the DAZN might try to say, "Oh, we offered him more money than Wilder because we're offering him euros, not dollars." The issue's probably going to be, though, what the only logical opponent would be a rematch with Joshua right now. That's it. The only logical opponent, unless you're using Klitschko as the bait to get Wilder into it. Because we have to remember, one of the reasons that, like I said, allegedly, because nobody really knows like the full details, but allegedly one of the reasons why Wilder turned the fight down was because he didn't have any guarantee that after Brazil he would get Joshua. So what would you do if you're DAZN and you do this? Okay, 3-fight deal. The second fight would be Joshua, but then the first fight would be Klitschko. That would be fair, especially when you consider how the late Manuel Stewart talked about Wilder before his death, when they came to him in 2011 at a time where he wasn't that high up in the division. I think he said that the next American, let's say, great American champion would be Wilder. And also, we have to remember, he also gave praise to Tyson Fury. So that would be the only way to take it, because Klitschko personally does not need it. Unless somewhere deep down inside of him, he feels he can't beat Joshua even at this age. That's the only way I can see it happening. Otherwise, he doesn't need it. The only way to do it is if the DAZN then starts fully guaranteeing that European K2 cards get put on DAZN, which might be a little, like Miguel mentioned, might be a little bit of a conflict with the agreement that they have with Triple G as far as Triple G promotions cards. So I don't really expect it to happen, like, unless he feels somewhere along the lines it has to be for Joshua or Wilder. Like, that's the only way I see it. It's not going to be about money.
And that's why I think it will happen. I think he's coming back to win a title against Wilder. That's what I think. The money's irrelevant. I think he's still, in his words, obsessed. He felt he could have knocked out Joshua. As exciting as that fight was, let's face it, folks, he could have and maybe should have knocked out Joshua if he had pulled the trigger in rounds uh, 6, 7, and 8 because Joshua was gassed mid rounds, and I think that still itches at him. That's still forefront in his mind, and I think that if he got one more opportunity and put him in position one more time, that this that on that if he was if he was to put himself in that position one more time, he would capitalize, and because of that, I think we may well see him back. Not for the money, but he wants a belt again. Your thoughts?
I agree with you that the most likely opponent for Klitschko really needs to be Wilder. And if that's the bait that DAZN is dangling in front of Wilder to bring him into the fold, perhaps that's the real discussion, is that Klitschko is sort of a loss leader to bring Wilder in. I'm just not sure that's going to work. I'm not sure Wilder sees any upside to the fight. It's a fight for him that really doesn't gain him a whole lot. Klitschko is the past of the division. He needs to be going after the guys who give him something. Klitschko can only take from Wilder. I'm not sure fighting him does anything for Deontay. Not at this point of Klitschko's career. You know, if they were 10 years closer in age and it was 10 years ago, oh, hell yeah, of course. But I don't think so today. I think the timing is wrong. It's an interesting discussion. I think that's all it's going to be. I think Daniel and I are on the side of not likely to happen. Surprisingly, Michael, you're on the side of, yeah, I think it might.
It probably will not happen, but something tells me he's going to come back. Something tells me he's going to come back.
Like I said, the only way to do it right now as it stands is it has to be against Joshua. That's the only fight that makes sense for him to come back from, because you're gonna have him try to be a stepping stone. Or to rebuild fighters. So you're gonna be. Are you gonna be the guy, Vladimir Klitschko, to be the guy that says, "Oh, I rebuilt David Price's career," or I'm gonna fight David Allen? Like I said, there's not a lot out there when it comes outside of Joshua when it comes to Klitschko's stage. And as far as getting the match with Wilder, the only thing that you gain is a common opponent. So you have a measuring stick. Just like we measured Wilder and Joshua when it came to fighting Eric Molina, for example. We measured them to it, but then again, that was Eric Molina. Klitschko would be a little bit more of a better test for it, but we're talking about a Klitschko that hasn't fought in close to 2 years, who would probably going to need at least a 4-month training camp just to get back in fighting shape. So, like I said, I don't see it happening in the sense, like I said, unless there's a guarantee. Unless there's some backroom negotiations, and then Wilder says, okay, after I knock out Brazil, I agree, okay, I'll fight Klitschko. That's the only way to do it, because if you're just signing in just for the mere hope of a title, Eddie Hearn has seen what you can do against Joshua. He knows that Joshua won, but he also knows that you rock Joshua, so he's not going to risk that. And you sign with DAZN, like I said, you have to get Wilder to do it, but Wilder's going to need that guarantee that Joshua's in that contract. And that seems to be the sticking issue as far as him linking the deal with DAZN. So to me, it's likely not going to happen, but we have to remember this is boxing. We have seen crazier things happen. Remember, we've seen George Foreman win the title in his mid-40s. So it would not surprise me. It would not surprise me if he came back, but I don't see it happening.
Okay, sorry, I was on mute there. Want to give a shout out to Olaf the Mighty, who's also in the YouTube chat. On the live YouTube chat, he says Klitschko is a mute point. He will lose to Fury every time. If Clip can't be number one, he doesn't need to come back. A lot of people will say the same, Olaf. But again, this is boxing. This is boxing, and I gotta. If he doesn't come back, I'll be dead damn wrong, and I'll just own up to it. But there's a part of me, there's a small part of me that believe, for some reason, he will come back, shoot for a title shot. Going further on the rumor mill, talking about the news during the news segment. Word is also popping up, and I'll go to you on this one, Daniel, that look, we saw Manny Pacquiao in the ring following Errol Spence's win over Mikey Garcia, and Spence was talking about a possible fight with Manny, and Manny, he said, why not, in terms of a fight with Spence, but we all knew that, yeah, he said it, but he really didn't mean it. Word now has come down that there are negotiations taking place, serious negotiations taking place for a fight between Manny Pacquiao and one Keith Thurman for July. Again, this just further says to me that he didn't mean what he said in terms of a fight with Errol Spence. I just never bought it. Pacquiao subsequently put out a poll a few days later on his Twitter feed. He mentioned a list of opponents. Thurman was on that list. Spence was not. So that, again, another sign that he wasn't really serious about a fight with Errol Spence, and it looks like he's going to fight Keith Thurman, which the fight I thought that would happen all along. And to me, it's like, okay, Thurman, he's been out of the ring 2 years. He hadn't done the damn thing. Didn't look impressive in his last fight, but yet he's getting rewarded. Your thoughts?
It's not so much that he's rewarded. Manny's is mandatory.
But he's still getting rewarded.
Well, okay, I can see where you're coming off as a reward, because it's Manny. But
and
this was a logical,
and he's going to get a pretty good, and he's going to get a pretty decent payday too.
Yeah, that I agree in the sense where you feel rewarded, but it was a logical outcome. Like, yeah, PBC can get Manny to get in the ring, and Manny is a person who likes to please people. We have to remember, this is the same man that had to hire somebody to say no for him because he can't say no to street beggars. So he's a person that wants to please. So of course, if PBC puts him in the ring in there, and they ask him, "Well, do you want to fight Errol Spence?" Of course, he's going to say yes, because he knows that's what people want to hear. But we all knew his team was never going to let him anywhere near Spence when it came to a real fight. Thurman is a more logical outcome. It's a straight line to a title. There's a good chance, like I said, because of Thurman's performances, that you could beat him, and you could become a champ. You could become a champion again, and then you can see about doing anything as far as the Sean Porters. And if you are so inclined, when Manny is into it, then you have to pick the poison pill. Because let's say you fight Thurman, you beat Thurman. And let's say Spence Porter falls through. And then you fight Porter and you beat him. If you want to unify those titles even more, you're going to have to pick your poison. It's either going to be you pick Spence or you pick Bud. And those were the two people that your team wants Manny nowhere near in. So I would say this is a logical outcome. Like I said, this is mandatory. It just has to be how is everything going to be structured around it? Because we have to remember there's still rumors around that Spence and Porter look to be close to negotiating a unification fight. So we have to see how that fares, but people have to expect this. Like, if you really if people really expected Pacquiao Spence, Abbott Bridge in Brooklyn to sell you.
Your reaction to the rumors of a fight happening between um, one time, aka sometime Thurman and one Manny Pacquiao, Gil?
Well, there have been a lot of rumors this week, some of which are being reported as if they were facts, which is not true. So Michael made it very clear. I appreciate it. It is a rumor. However, I think it's a pretty good rumor if we're going to speculate about it. It makes sense. It's not about who deserves a fight or who earned the reward for a fight. It's about who can put butts in the seats. Can the match be made? Is there money? Is there enough money to go around for everybody? Does everybody make a profit? And will it advance either man's career? And the answer to all those questions is yes. So come on, folks. If being deserving had anything to do with how boxing matchups are made, Adrian Broner would not be in anybody's conversation, and a whole lot of other guys you could name. So let's just put that aside. We have all made our peace with what happens in the ring and divorced it as best we can outside the ring. Having said that, it's a makeable fight. It's not a bad fight. I think Manny, unlike standing in front of Spence or Bud, does have a decent chance. And if I'm Manny Pacquiao and saw Thurman's last fight, I say, hell yes, the sooner the better before he gets his legs back under him. Because Thurman had a rough outing in his return. And I'm not sure he's going to still be up to speed in another few months, 6 months, especially if he doesn't have another fight between now and any fight that might be made with Pacquiao. And say what you will, Pacquiao, especially in Las Vegas, he can fill an arena. And that ends up being the number one consideration for a lot of matchmaking. So wouldn't be surprised to see it. I'm not sure anybody is really thinking a whole lot past that. And Manny's shelf life is starting to grow shorter and shorter and shorter. He says he feels great. He's training well. He's learned what he needs to do to be training in his late 30s. And maybe he's got a few more years in him. He needs to buy some time before he can run for president of the Philippines, which is what we've been saying now for a couple of years. And he does want to earn those paydays both for himself and for all the programs he supports, which if there's any more noble reason to be in boxing than to give your money away, I can't really think of one. So it's doable. Of all the rumors that are out there right now, that is the one I'd bet money on happening.
First of all, I want to say before we move on, shout out to Inside the Ropes TV. He's joined us live from the UK. Thanks for listening live. Be sure to hit that like button. If you want to subscribe, please do. Gus has a comment in the chat. He says, this is prize fighting and money is the prerequisite, even if fighters don't acknowledge that it is not their sole proclivity. Yeah, you're right. I can't knock what you said. The only thing I can just say is, yeah, you're right. Amen. Money is the bottom line is the bottom line. And that's what both Pacquiao and Thurman see. Titles and all that aside, they also see the payday that both can get from fighting in this kind of fight. And so yeah, I have my issues with Thurman, but at the end of the day, Gail, you do have a point here. We can criticize Thurman for all they want, but the fight is sellable, the fight is marketable, and the people will show up. And as Gus said, the money will be there in both Pacquiao and Thurman. Neither of them will turn it down. I'm going to you, Gail, for this last story. Sorry, guys. no previews, no fight previews. We're going to save that for next week because the week of the 13th, power-packed weekend of boxing, and we're going to dive deep into that next week. Andrew Cancio scored arguably the biggest upset, one of the biggest upsets that we've seen in a good while, when he beat Alberto Machado for the junior super featherweight, junior lightweight title, WBA version in Fantasy Springs. You were in attendance at that fight. You was able to interview Cancio, I believe, before and after the fight. Well, Cancio posted a message on his Twitter page that the rematch is going to happen. Machado had initially asked for an immediate rematch. The BA okayed it. Let me get this story straight. Machado wanted a immediate rematch in March. The BA okayed it. Cancio, a week or so ago, on his Twitter page, basically announced that the rematch is going to happen June 8th at Fantasy Springs once again. There's been no official announcement, but going by Cancio's Twitter page, we will see a rematch. Given the fact, Gail, that you was at the fight, you interviewed Cancio, real Rocky-like story. Your thoughts on the fact that the fight is going to happen again at the same venue where the upset occurred the first time?
That is Cancio's house. He is from the little tiny desert town of Blythe, California, population about, I think, which is about 90 miles away. That's his crowd, his people. They absolutely fueled him during that upset fight. They'll pack the joint again for him. Machado is on uneven footing there. Not a lot of Puerto Rican fans in the house out there in the high desert. It's an intriguing matchup. And, you know, there's some risk in Cancio taking the rematch. But generally in rematches, things don't change a lot. We've learned that in boxing. And we all do well to remember that. Oscar De La Hoya is also extremely happy with Cancio and with this redemption story. He loves it. I'm not sure he'd let him go into harm's way if he didn't think he could pull it off again. And his win was so dominating, despite the fact that he made a mistake and got dropped in the first round. He recovered so well. And nothing is more powerful in a boxer's arsenal than confidence. And Cancio has always believed in himself, but he had to work his way back into the mindset of getting back in the ring. And a win like that, somebody comes out with all the confidence in the world, overcoming the odds that he did. And hey, yesterday, he just got the key to the city of Blythe, California, making him officially the most famous person ever to come from Blythe, California. So, hey, it's all good. And that's a great place to do it. Yeah, he'd probably draw slightly more fans. Let's say if they put it at, I'm sorry, StubHub Center, aka whatever helpful name they now call it, in Carson. But that's an hour and a half west of Fantasy Springs. And yeah, maybe they get 5,000 or 6,000 there, but that will not be the same as a packed house of 3,000 absolutely rabid, screaming, crazy fans out there at Fantasy Springs. And if Golden Boy is smart about it, they'll put a lot more of these local young guys back on the card. They'll take Aaron McKenna right back out there. They'll put Rocky Hernandez back on the card, allow the draw of Cancio to then bring other people into the building, just like Ryan Garcia brought people into the building to get another boxing fix. They'll sell it out. They'll Garcia and all of Cancio's fans, and he's got a lot of them out there, and it'll make for a very exciting atmosphere. This is a long-term play, and it's a very smart one.
Oh, well,
I'll be there. Believe me, that will not to be missed if you're in the area.
Absolutely. I'll go to you, Dan. You will break down this fight further as we get closer to the actual date. But really a proving ground for both guys. For Cancio, uh, Rocky-like story. Is he more than a one-hit wonder? Um, is there more substance? Is there even more substance to him as a fighter? For Machado, he has a lot to prove because, as Gail said, once Cancio got up from the knockdown in the first round, rounds 2 and especially 3 and 4, let's just be blunt about it. He whooped Machado's ass. Um, for Machado, uh, is it a fluke? Is the fact that he's had some issues in the past making 130 catching up to him, or is he not the fighter that we all thought he was heading into the Cancio fight?
That's the question that I have mainly because I figured when they mentioned the weight, that's like, okay, he's going to go up to lightweight. He kind of knows he can't do it anymore, but pride does a lot of things. And this is probably one of the things that's coming into it where pride is saying, I knocked him down. I let him get away with one. I can beat him. I just got to do a right training camp. But that takes a lot of confidence a lot of times to do it, especially after that type of loss. It takes a lot of confidence for you to say, no, I can still beat him, and there's like no interim fight in between. There's just like, no, I want him next. And with Cancio, that's always going to be that was always going to be the fight that was easiest to make for him because Machado gave him the opportunity for the title. So it was only right to give him a chance to reclaim it. Now, with Cancio, you just had to see. We know he works for building roads or building something in California. So we know his story pretty well. It's like a Joe Smith of the West Coast in a way. And we have to see, though, if he himself has let himself bask in the spotlight a bit after winning the title. If that will fall into it. So it's a very intriguing matchup, and I agree with Gail. You have to put it where that venue, it's exactly where it needs to put it in. You're not going to get a more electric atmosphere, particularly for Cancio after that one. And given the fact that these two guys exchanged knockdowns in the first fight, there's a good chance that you might get an even better fight this time. So I'm not mad at it. Yeah, there's one argument for StubHub, but then the place that it's being held at is perfect for it.
I tend to agree. I tend to agree. StubHub, they can move it there, but why? You get a guaranteed sellout at NDO. That is Cancio's house, as Gail would say. As Gail said, was it sold out the first time, Gail?
Yes, indeed, it was.
Well,
Interesting. They configured the arena for a few more seats for Garcia, and they're still playing around a little bit now that these are DAZN fights, and the production's a little bit different. So I believe they managed to get a few more seats in for Garcia. The sellout it was considered a sellout for Machado and Cancio, and without looking back at my story, I seem to remember it being 2,700 and change. So I'm sure for Garcia, it was closer to 3. And it's a nice little venue. Every seat's a good seat. It's not, jammed. You're not jammed in there like a bad airline flight. It's a very nice place to see a fight. So it should sell out.
Yeah, sell out the first.
And the Garcia fight was sold out almost a week ahead of time.
Yeah, so the first fight was sold out. It'll sell out again,
Yeah.
and I think it will even be garner even more viewers on DAZN as well. So it's going to be a good look on the round. Gus in the chat said he thinks that Machado needs to move up 2 weights. like Lisa Selby? Maybe, because
Oh, I
like I
think
said,
Beth is right. And even after the fight, I'm now hearing this conversation about Machado. After he was defeated, he even talked about, well, maybe I need to think about moving up in weight. So perhaps he's decided, listen, if I'm going to move up anyway, I risk nothing fighting Cancio again. If I lose, so be it. I'm going to go up in weight. If I win, I get my revenge. And then if I feel like dropping the belt, I can.
indeed. One last note before we decide to shut down the show or this episode. Uh, I'll go to you, Gail, and you can follow up, Daniel. Thoughts on the recently announced ESPN card that's going to take place May 11th? Berchelt Vargas rematch, Navarrete fighting Dog Bay, their rematch on the undercard.
I love the positioning of this. It's sort of the revenge card. Guys looking for a little revenge in these rematches, and I like this pairing quite a bit of these two fights. Now, I think it's a tale of two very different fights. I don't think anybody in their right mind thinks that, God bless him, old warhorse Vargas has got enough in him to pull that belt away from Miguel Berchelt, who's by far the fresher, younger guy. However, that Dogbe Navarrete fight is going to be very intriguing. Who wants it more? Who fixes the problems from the first fight? What did Dogbe learn from that fight? And was that a one-hit wonder for Navarrete? I don't know. This is going to be a card well worth watching. I very much like these matchups I'm seeing Top Rank put together. Do credit to their matchmakers. They're doing a really, really nice job.
This will be the final word before we shut down the show. Daniel, your thoughts about this this card, rematch card, if you will, between Berchelt Machado, Berchelt Vargas 2 and Navarrete Dogbe 2.
I love it. I absolutely love it. When it comes to Berchelt Vargas, yeah, there's a lot to say when it comes to Vargas. Like, a guy fought like 3 absolute wars in a row where he didn't have to, and that ultimately cost him the title. But Berchelt is also coming off, like I said, injuries, so he's had some time away. That does make him fresher, but it also can make him rusty. So the question can always be, can Vargas pull some of what he did against Takashi Miura, where it looked like he was going to be out of the door against Miura, and then he pulled it off out of nowhere. So there's always that question. I don't think he can, unfortunately, at this stage, even with, like I said, with Berchelt coming off injuries. So, but it'll be an intriguing fight. Navarrete versus Dogbe, that's the one I want to look into, because we have to see what adjustment Dogbe teams make as far as how their attacking style is going to counter Navarrete's length. Because I think the mistake that they made in the first fight was just assume that once Dogbe landed his left hand, then Navarrete was just going to falter, and then they would have a quick, easy defense. We found out that didn't happen. Navarrete did his homework and pretty much kept him at arm's length. And ultimately, if we all remember how he looked between the 11th and 12th round, Dogbe, he looked absolutely lost. We have to see if that team made the adjustments to it. And we have to see if Navarrete really just gets complacent, saying, okay, I beat him this way. He's not going to change. So I don't have to make any adjustments into it. It's both intriguing matchups. I do love it. And we have to mention that when it comes into it, Vargas is still a Golden Boy fighter. So this is a sign, in a way, that if it comes to the DAZN and ESPN, they are not going to stop each other from making fights. So that may be a little bit of an open door as far as we mentioned it with the heavyweight situation, whether it's Klitschko or should the DAZN try again with Wilder.
And I think that's going to be the final word for this particular episode. Vargas, I just don't think he has enough left to deal with the Bird who's um, entering his prime. Too too young, too strong, too powerful. In terms of Navarrete and Dog Bay, um, the question is really on Isaac Dog Bay. What adjustment he's going to make? He's going to have to make adjustments because he got bounced around and beat up in that first fight. And if he doesn't make any adjustments, he's going to get knocked out this time and knocked out quick. So the emphasis, the onus is on him. How is he going to adjust? Not just the length of Navarrete, but also the power and the size of Navarrete. Navarrete looks so much bigger than him. And whenever he landed a hard punch on Dog Bay felt it. Dog Bay was moved. Dog Bay was hurt. So again, what can Isaac Dog Bay do to combat the physical advantages that Navarrete imposed on him in the first fight? So yeah, episode 246 is in the books. I want to thank everybody who joined us on the live YouTube chat. One more comment from Gus here. Gus with Corruption of Boxing. Damn good rematch card. Hope Vargas F's him up, but his scar tissue will open up. Yeah, that too, Gus. The issue of scar tissue. Vargas, he cuts easily, and I just think he's shot worn at this point. I want to thank Gus for joining us in the live YouTube chat. Also want to thank Inside the Ropes TV, Olaf Almighty, George from Hands of Fire Boxing, Big Rotten Apple as well as What You Need. If you like what you've heard, please hit that like button. Please subscribe to us on YouTube as well as SoundCloud and iTunes. You can also check us out on Spotify. We are on Spotify. Not only this episode, but all previous episodes. Pound for Pound Box Report is on Spotify. I'll go to the panel here, starting with ladies first. Gail from Communities Digital News. For those who want to talk the sweet science, for those who want to talk Game of Thrones this weekend, Gail.
No. One more week.
One more week.
Oh, we're
week.
counting
Right.
down. Oh, we're counting down.
Oh, I thought it was the 7th. I thought it was the 7th. You're right. It is the 14th.
It is the 14th. Although if they go early, great.
You're right. It is the 14th, but still coming soon.
Yeah, well, the live version of this show has been competing with the red carpet premiere. So you're going to see all of that going on tonight. You're looking at your social media and your news coverage. So
but anyway, for those who want to talk boxing, for those who want to talk Game of Thrones, small business advice, media, let the folks know where they can find you, because you also teach media courses as well. Let the folks know where they can hit you up.
I do. We'll have to get into a discussion about media literacy and journalism one of these days. But in any event, boxing is our reason for existence. And you can find me on Communities Digital News. It's COM, COMM, Digi, DIGI News, comdiginews.com.
And Daniel, for those who want to talk the sweet science, for those who want to talk the NBA, particularly when it comes to the Miami Heat, let the folks know where they can find you.
You can find us. Find me at Ruckus99 on Twitter. Tomorrow night, me and my good friends Joe Francis for Boxings.com, we're going to do our pod for the week into a preview in the fights. And there's going to be an interesting one. I'm wondering if Inside the Ropes TV is the same Inside the Ropes that hosts Paul Heyman almost every now WrestleMania weekend, because there's not a lot of things happening in the ring when it comes to boxing, but when it comes to shows, this entire weekend is going to be filled with a lot of things if you're a wrestling fan. From NXT, the G1 Supercard, to WrestleMania this Sunday.
Maybe I have to look it up. First time joining us as a show, it may well be that same Inside the Ropes TV. First and foremost, for those who may not know, not only do I do Pound for Pound Boxing Report, I'm also a contributor to Three Kings Boxing, and I just got word for them. I want to give a shout out to Tomoka Kameda. Looks like he's going to fight Ray Vargas. Next, it seems that according to Three Kings Boxing, I recently wrote about Kameda, and Kameda gave a like to one of my articles on the gram. So shout out to Tomoka Kameda, current interim champion, WBC version at 122 pounds. Shout out to him. For those who want to talk the sweet science, for those who want to talk music, for those who want to talk fitness, for yours truly, you know where to find me. Twitter, Brother JR at Brother JR76. You can also find me on Instagram, Brother JRSC. As I said to begin the show, if you want to find out all things regarding Pound for Pound Boxing Report, blog page is the place to go to, p4pboxingreport.wordpress.com. The right of the page, you will find links to where to find us all over social media. Also, where to find Pound for Pound Boxing Report on all available platforms that carry podcasts, including now Spotify, and got a donate button up there, PayPal as well as a Cash Me link. You can check us out there. $1, $2, $5, $10, whatever you can spare, whatever spare change you have free in your hand. Please show some love, Pound for Pound Boxing Report, because most things are not free, including the production of this podcast. Again, no fight previews this weekend. Going to save it for next week. Big weekend on the weekend of the 13th. You got Vassell Lomachenko fighting Anthony Crawler. On the 12th, Zerto Ramirez making his light heavyweight debut on the undercard of that bout. Arguably the biggest bout in women's boxing history, Gail. Clarissa Shields, Christina Hammer, going to fight in Atlantic City on the 13th. That's going to be on Showtime on DAZN. Also on the 13th, Jaime Munguia fighting Dennis Hogan. Munguia making the defense of his junior middleweight title. So yeah, Power Pack weekend. Also, Caleb Truass is going to be making the first defense of his IB. Well, Caleb Truass is going to fight Peter Quillen. Excuse me, I got that fight confused. Caleb Truass is going to be fighting Peter Quillen, IBF super middleweight eliminator. Sergey Derevchenko is going to fight on the undercard of that. So, yeah, a lot of boxing happening on the weekend of the 13th. So, yeah, again, want to thank everybody in the live YouTube chat for joining us on the show. Gus, Inside the Ropes TV, Olaf, George, George, Big Rotten Apple, What You Need. For Gail from Communities Digital News, for Daniel from the Inscriber, I'm your host, Michael. Again, episode 246 of Pound for Pound Box Report. We will see you next time. Everyone have a good evening, good night, and stay on the line right quick, Gail.